Айтишникам привет.
How you going? What's your name? Oh, my name's Bimala. How you going? What you up? You can easily learn within 3 months. 3 months writing,
Смотри, special deal, guys.
Easy. Harvey, how you going?
Национальности. Что такое происходит? Я не понимаю. Извиняюсь, у нас лотов много дистербенсов. Александр, иди проверяешь. Попробовали сделать что-то спонтанное, да. Ну, получилось как получилось. Спасибо большое. Айтишникам привет. Я сегодня пригласил своего хорошего товарища Бими. Хочу ему позадавать несколько вопросов по поводу английского языка. Бими – австралиец, носитель английского языка с очень интересным именем. Вот, я его пригласил сегодня, так скажем, встретиться. Бими, привет!
Привет, мой друг, как дела?
Друг. Хорошо.
Да.
Спасибо большое, что пришел. Thank you very much for coming.
No worries.
Окей, Бими, расскажи нам немножко о себе и о своем интересном имени, таким нестандартном для австралийского, так скажем, населения.
Very simple. We have in Australia Hare Krishnas. Also, you have in Russia Hare Krishnas. Some people know, some people don't. So my parents joined the Hare Krishnas when I was before I was born, and they had 5 children. And all of us, because of the way that they grew up and they brought us up, they gave us all Indian names. So my name is Bimala Prasad Schroeder. So my father is German, my mother is Australian.
Can anyone repeat that? Кто-нибудь может это повторить?
Bimala Prasad Schroeder.
Nice.
Da. So I grew up as a Hare Krishna. I grew up in an Indian religion, and I grew up in Australia. So up until the age of almost 11 years old, I didn't really interact much with the Anglo-Saxon world. So I spent 2 years in school in India, between 7 and 9 years old. And then when I came back to Australia, I stayed for another 2 years, and then we went to live in Indonesia for almost 1.5 years. And then we spent another almost half a year in Singapore and Malaysia. And then we came back to Australia.
Бими, ты говоришь на индийском. Do you speak Hindi?
So я чуть-чуть, это бенгали язык, это, yeah, that's it.
That's very nice. Okay.
Yeah.
So what are you doing now?
So I have a business. I do Uber, but I also teach English to people as well. So I have a bit of a history with helping people with the English due to the way that I've grown up. So having grown up in other countries with other people who can't speak English well, I naturally developed a method from a young age where I would naturally copy the accents well, and people would understand me better.
And by the way, stop copying my accent, okay?
Oh, sorry, I stopped copying accent.
Speak Australian accent.
Speak Australian, yeah. So, and because of this natural ability to copy the accents, and also I can do many different accents, I discovered that through friends that were from India, from Colombia, Japanese, Spanish, French people, that when I speak to them with an Australian accent, even though I'm speaking in English, they don't understand me very well. But if I put on a French accent, or I put on a Russian accent, or I put on an Indonesian accent, when I speak English, they understand me better. And also, I naturally...
That's so true, true. Yeah, на самом деле это так и работает. Да, когда он со мной разговаривает на английском языке с русским, с такими нотками русского языка, мне гораздо проще с ним общаться. Yep, so true. Sorry for interruption.
No, нет. Это
feedback, just a feedback.
That's right. So this method that I had a few housemates that I lived with throughout the years, and one of them was a Colombian guy. He had been here for 5 years. He was working as a cleaner. So he didn't have a lot of opportunity to speak to other English-speaking people and get practice. So when he lived with me, we spent a lot of time talking. And his accent was very poor, his pronunciation was bad, his spelling was bad. And within less than 3 months of living with me, his English improved, his speaking improved, and just because some of the ways that I explain things, the way that I speak and the way that I explain the language, and the pronunciation, the grammar, the structure of the grammar, everything like that. So from then on, I discovered that I had a bit of a knack with teaching people English, that I have a great way of connecting with people from other countries. And because I grew up naturally enjoying the languages, and I've learned a little bit of every single language that I've come across as well. So that's one of the interesting benefits of it, I suppose, yeah.
Sorry, we got like a lot of, извиняюсь, у нас много disturbances, да, мы, во-первых, снимаем на телефон, и периодически приходят сообщения, там, звонки и так далее. Вот. Потом у нас, значит, дети бегают по кругу, да. Что-то попрошайничают, поэтому извиняемся. Вот, может быть, возможно, я даже это вырежу, если получится. Если не получится, ну, соответственно, не вырежу.
Это нормальный день в Брисбене.
Нормальный день
Брисбен в парке.
Бими, смотри, ты не только помогал, получается, своим соседям, ты сейчас имеешь присутствие, так скажем, в русской комьюнити, да, ты ходишь в русскую школу и общаешься с русскоязычными людьми, в том числе со мной. То есть мы уже с Бими знакомы больше 2 лет, и я с Бими также практикую английский язык, то есть он мне помогает поставить акцент и какие-то слова, как правильно говорить, и предложения. Поэтому можно сказать, что Бими ты помогаешь и русскоязычным as well. By the way, in Australia, it's like unusual that people correct you. They'll always say like, "Yeah, you're fine, you're good, your English is perfect," and no one will correct you.
People are too nice.
Yeah, too nice. Yeah. So there's like it's very good to have a friend who actually could point you to your mistakes. So the Bimi is such a friend for myself, for me. So thank you very much for that.
No worries.
And следующий вопрос, Дэн. Следующий вопрос. Смотри, ты уже работал, получается, с кучей разных людей, то есть это разные национальности. Что такое происходит? Я не понимаю, что происходит. Так, ребят, я все, еще раз извиняюсь. У нас в очередной раз гимбал решил отказаться работать. То ли слишком ему тяжело, то ли ветер дует, он постоянно выключается. В общем, я взял телефон в руки. Надеюсь, будет не сильно шейки. Надеюсь, картинка будет окей. Но в любом случае, продолжаем наше интервью, потому что интервью нужно сделать, потому что информация здесь будет полезная, я считаю, для многих. Да, и, надеюсь, очень мотивирующая. Продолжаем. Итак, Бими, я уверен, что ты наверняка уже встречался с многими людьми, многими иммигрантами в Австралию, с разных стран, наверняка с разных континентов, включая русскоговорящих ребят. Скажи, пожалуйста, какие наиболее частые проблемы с языком ты видишь? И какие ты можешь отметить, чтобы люди начали их исправлять, так скажем, как можно быстрее?
Pronunciation is one of the main things in English. If you pronounce things a bit wrong in English. So in Australia, people are very forgiving. But pronunciation is key. In English, we have many words such as read and read. They have exactly the same spelling, but they're pronounced differently. Now, if you get them in the wrong order in English, this is incorrect. Whilst if you look at languages like Russian, where it's very flexible, you can say the same sentence 3 different ways, and it's okay, because people will understand and they will unscramble it. In English, this doesn't exist. Everything must be perfectly in order, and in that way, English can be very rigid. So we must say the cat is black. You can't say cat black the. You can't swap them around. So they must be in order. And the other one when it comes to so that's language sentence structure. You've got your pronunciation, and the other one is context. So context is very important. It's the same in any country. You have to understand the context in which you are speaking. And the other big thing in English, and especially in Australia, is slang, because there is a lot of slang that is used, right? And it can be even the smallest little bit, but it can mean something. So you as a person who wants to learn English or who are dealing with people who speak English internationally, and if it's their first language or even their second language but have learned English well, you must learn those 3 things and you must get them correct. Very, very much if you look at Russian, for an example, where the grammar is very, very important, but the sentence structure is not. So in Russian, you must get your grammar correct, but your sentence structure doesn't have to be perfect. But in English, your grammar must be correct, your sentence structure must be correct, and your pronunciation has to be good as well. Because if you don't, people look at you and they think you sound silly. The other key thing is that, as we have said, Australians are very lovely people and not often willing to correct somebody. And you have people like myself, who I want to help people improve, so I'll say to them, I'll do it in a nice way, and I'll say, hey, you've made a mistake here. This is how you say it correctly, because if you say it like this, you will sound like you're saying this. So this is a very important thing. Yeah.
Спасибо большое, Бими. Спасибо тебе огромное. Смотри, говоря о русскоязычных ребятах, да, какие, ты думаешь, есть ли, точнее, не какие, а есть ли какие-то особенности менталитета, которые, так скажем, мешают русскоязычным ребятам освоить английский язык?
A good example of this, as Dennis has asked me, is my father is German, but my father is married to a Russian lady. And they had many complications in the early part of their marriage because his wife was very superstitious. And the other thing, not just the superstition, but also Russians are very literal. In Russia, if you ask somebody, how are you? They're going to tell you how they are. There's not how we say in English, fluff. So fluff is like stuff that we say that sounds nice and it makes you feel good. So if somebody asks me in English in Australia, oh, how are you? I know that they're not really asking how I am most of the time. They're just being polite and they're just making conversation. How are you going? Oh, yeah, I'm great. Yeah, how are you? Oh, yes, that's fine. But the thing is, in Russian, or in a lot of countries in the world, if you ask somebody how they are, they're going to tell you. If they're having a bad day, they're going to tell you how they're feeling. And if they're having a good day, they're going to tell you how they're feeling. And a lot of the times in Australia or in English, if we ask somebody, how are you? We have no intention of really knowing how you are. It's just like, how do we say, like, it's like a greeting. It's like some small talk as we speak. So this can be a problem in Russia because the Russian-speaking people, they come to our country and they're used to a more literal way of being where people are more honest and open about their feelings if somebody asks the question. Whilst in English, we have a lot of, as we say, like, we call it fake honesty. We will say, oh, you know, I'm great, you know, how are you? But really, I'm having a bad day. But I'm not going to tell you that I'm having a bad day. Does this make sense?
Да, это как бы имеет огромный смысл. Thank you very much for sharing that.
Yeah.
Спасибо, что ты это рассказал. Потому что это действительно, оно так и есть. Да, и когда я только переехал, I'm saying that when I just moved to Australia, я всегда отвечал, вот, когда меня спрашивали, как дела, я прям рассказывал, вот у меня дела так-то, вот тут такие-то проблемы. И потом только ко мне пришло понимание, что на самом деле никому это особо не интересно. Это как будто тебя спросили, там, привет, как ты? Ну да, хорошо, ну привет. То есть это как такое greeting, приветствие. Спасибо, Бими.
And there's one other thing. The other thing you have to understand in English, the same in Russian, as we have in English, is we have polite ways to say things, and we have formal and informal. Like you would say, здравствуйте or привет. There are two different ways. But in Russia, it's more formal. It's considered more important to know that you're saying здравствуйте or привет to somebody who is like a doctor or a president or a teacher. You have to be very polite. Whilst in English, this does exist less. When we say nice things like using formal speaking, we only do it because we want something or we want to be polite to a person. Maybe they're our boss and that sort of thing. But most of the time, it's not used. People are very lazy with this. Whilst in Russian, this is very important. My stepmother, she said to me, if you meet an older person, you must ask, please, can I call you on ti or vous? If they agree you can call them on ti, then it's okay. Right? But in English, this doesn't exist. We don't ask them, hey, can I be formal with you or informal with you? This doesn't exist.
Да, спасибо большое, Бими. Во-первых, спасибо ему большое за то, что он делится с нами такими вещами, потому что, когда я изучал английский, я начинал, на самом деле, изучать английский в России, а потом я продолжал, и так у меня был очень такой маленький уровень языка, так скажем, в Казахстане, да, никто нам не рассказывал про вот эти вот ментальные, так скажем, разницы между англоговорящими ребятами и русско-говорящими, да, ребятами. Вот, спасибо большое, Бими.
Да.
Как ты думаешь, для работы, конкретно в Австралии, какой язык важнее? Точнее, что важнее, разговорный или письменный?
It depends on the job. So if you're dealing with a job that you are obviously communicating with people on a regular basis, then speaking. But if you're going through Dennis and you're learning a skill such as IT, you need to learn how to write. Right? Very important that you learn how to write, because if you're going to be communicating with clients overseas, right, or if you wanted to move here for a job, or simply that you're just doing work remotely, you must learn how to write correctly and get things in the correct order and use the right context. Because if you make a mistake, very easily somebody else with better English than you will say get the job or whatever it is.
Спрашиваю Бими, его, так скажем, совет будет научиться сначала писать хорошо, а потом разговаривать или что-то другое?
Yeah. So at the beginning, you obviously want to learn your writing and you want to learn your numbers. So these are the most important things. It's quite ironic, as it's how I started to learn Russian. Is I started learning the alphabet and I started learning numbers first, and then small words. Now, most of my Russian has been done on an app, so I've spent a lot of time learning and reading and writing right? So my reading and writing is excellent. My speaking and listening, not so good because I lack that experience. So it's the same in English. If you're going to be dealing with orders and jobs online and you're going to be speaking to people through email or through correspondence such as Messenger, Telegram, whatever, it's best to have good writing and reading skills. So yeah, definitely start off with reading and writing. They're the two main things. From there you can build, because the English speaking side of things, it's the same with me in Russian. It's just practice.
Бими, как ты думаешь, сколько времени требуется, чтобы научиться нормально писать на английском? И сколько времени требуется, чтобы научиться разговаривать на английском языке?
Reading and writing will be a lot quicker. You can easily learn within 3 months, reading and writing. Speaking and listening will obviously take time and practice. So you'll be looking at 1 year to 2 years. This depends entirely. Now, if you are just living in Russia and then you're working remotely, you're going to be much slower when it comes to listening and speaking. The great advantage that you have in Russia is you can go to any major city like Moscow, St. Petersburg, Krasnodar, you can go to Vladivostok, and you have lots of people that also speak English. So the opportunity for you to improve your English and actually speak with people is much higher than here in Australia if we want to learn Russian. So with the reading and writing, within 3 months, you could easily be proficient if you put in the effort. And also the major benefit that you have of coming from Russian to English is because half of the Russian alphabet is Latin. The only difference that I found when learning Russian to English is just seeing that certain letters, something else in English. Such as if you say N in Russian is H in English, which you don't have. You have, instead of an X in English, in Russian, it is H. So knowing these differences are very important, and the practice that you need is to not confuse the two. So in the beginning, it will be confusing. You will learn it. You will gradually, you'll make mistakes, but if you persist and it becomes practice for you, your brain will automatically recognize the difference between the two. So like me with the Russian, it took me maybe 2 to 3 months to pick it up on the app. And if I took a break for maybe 1 month, I got lazy. I would find quite often that my brain would change back to English again. And I would start making mistakes again.
Ты говоришь, что за 3 месяца я могу научиться писать на английском?
Easy,
So,
very easy.
you promise me?
Yeah.
Can you do that for someone?
Actually, there is only
For one of our subscribers?
Yeah,
For some of
definitely.
our subscribers?
I can teach you that. It's very easy. The only thing that will be not guaranteed is, it's the same in Russian, is the cursive writing. This takes a lot of practice. But the good thing between Russian and English is excellent, because the cursive, a lot of the letters that they look the same in Russian, they're also the same in English, but they just have a different meaning. And that is the best part about cursive in English and Russian.
Ну, в общем, если у вас есть проблемы с написанием на английском языке, да, с написанием, я так понимаю, писем, вы знаете, кого спрашивать. Okay, Bimi, thank you very much, really appreciate that. Скажи, пожалуйста, есть ли какие-то вещи, которые нужно держать в памяти, когда ты общаешься с англоговорящим человеком?
Sentence structure. This is the most important thing. If you get your sentence structure even correct by 1 word, right? In their mind, they go, "Oh, this guy sounds stupid," or "This." They take you less seriously. This is very important. In English, even though people are nice, they will judge you based on your sentence structure. If it is incorrect by 1 word, you drop in their eyes. So this is why it's important. If you're clearly spoken, right, and you have like me, when I speak English, people understand me better because I'm more clearer and I'm slower. Now, a lot of Australians won't speak to you like this. They will speak very fast, no different than Russians, and they will speak with a lot of slang. And this, obviously, we're not going to understand. So sentence structure number 1.
Какие бы три совета ты бы мог дать начинающему айтишнику, который хочет изучить английский язык?
Especially in IT, as I was saying before, if you're speaking to people online, your sentence structure needs to be correct, your spelling has to be good, right? And you have to understand the context in which you're speaking. If you're looking for a job online and you're competing against other people, say from India, Philippines, China, who are also trying to sell their skills, and you're one of, say, 3 people, whoever has the best sentence structure, who sounds the clearest and sounds like their English is going to be the best, will most likely get chosen. Even if your work is better, it does not matter. If you can't communicate if you can't communicate correctly, the person who you are applying for the job or trying to get the contract with, they will assume that you are less competent than the person whose structure is better and correct. And especially with people like Philippines and India, who have a very strong background of speaking English because of colonialism through the English and the Americans, they have a much better chance, even if they lack the ability. So just remember, your ability matters not if your English is not correct. You must, so this is, would that basically be it? Or we could say,
that's a great advice.
Yeah,
Two
things.
more.
The other thing is definitely presentation, right? If you present yourself well and you communicate well with your skills.
Could you give an example of the presentation when we're speaking about the language particularly?
Okay, so if you say in a message to a potential client who you want to do work for, if you used to say to them, I have the necessary skills to complete this task, but if you say, oh, my skill's very good, I'm number one, he's going to look at that straight away and just go, this guy, his English is terrible, and he's going to make mistakes. So this is a classic thing. Is this basically it? Yeah.
Yeah.
And number three.
Number three, I got one suggestion for your advice. If you could explain that to our subscribers, that will be amazing. У меня есть одна штука, которая действительно такой key в английском языке, и про которую мало кто говорит. И вот я хочу как раз, чтобы Бими попробовал нам это объяснить. What about the greetings, my friend? What about the greetings?
Greetings, okay. Very much like in Russian, the greeting is important. You have to know how to, as we say in English, it's a very interesting principle. It's in sales. If you're selling, you must know how to open somebody. So if you know how to open somebody, you know how to speak to them and greet them. You say, it's the same in Russian. When it comes to greeting somebody that you're doing a job for, you must know the formal. So you say Mr., Mrs., Sir, or Madam. These are very important. This comes to when you're answering an email. You say, kind regards, Vladislav or whatever. You must always use the formal at the beginning and at the end, and this is important in emails. Australians, we're very famous for being very, not lazy, but we're too comfortable. We don't have this, how you going, здравствуйте, we don't say that. We go, how you going? Oh, how are you, This is not correct. You can't use this. If you're going internationally, even the most relaxed people like Australians, when it comes to dealing with companies and potential contracts, potential leads, anything that you deal with, you have to be very formal.
So, would you go, for example, you're sending an email to someone you barely know or you don't know at all, what would be your opening? Would that be like hi and name, or that will be like dear sir, madam? What do you think, by the way? What do you think about this, dear sir, madam?
Yeah, so there's...
Would you use that?
Yeah. So
or do you think that is just like a bad influence?
No, say sometimes it depends on the company. This is, again, context. If you're dealing with a large company...
We are speaking about Australia.
Yeah, in Australia.
If you are speaking about Australia.
If you are speaking with a company of any size, you must use madam. You must say, you never open with hi, how are you? This is a very informal way.
Probably that's why. Наверное, поэтому у меня так мало клиентов.
That's it. But the thing is it's very important. You have to be, when you are dealing with clients, it's very strange in Australia that people will be very formal in the workplace, very formal with government institutions, and they'll be, but when it comes to basic people on the street, how you going? Oh, hi. There's no, oh, hello, sir, how are you? No, this is too formal. So on the street, you can't say, hello, sir, how are you? This is too weird. It's strange. People think, oh, why are you being so formal? What do you want? They think that you want something. But if you are dealing with a company, if you are dealing with a government, if you are dealing with a potential client, if you're dealing with, especially if you are a person who is doing work for somebody else, or if you have a customer that they are doing work for you, or you are selling them, you have to be very formal. Because in Australia, if you make a mistake and you are not formal enough, or you are too, if you come across as disrespectful or informal, this can get you in a lot of trouble. You would lose customers. Your reputation would suffer. And we have a saying in English, we say, word of mouth is the best advertisement. And it says that one person, if they have a positive experience, will tell 10 people. But if one person has a bad experience, you will tell 50 people. And this is it.
Right. Спасибо большое, Бими. Thank you very much. Honestly, I expected that you start like saying some different stuff about the greetings, but that makes sense. Почему я ожидал, что Бими будет говорить немножко по-другому? Потому что, как правильно Бими заметил, в Австралии, особенно в Квинсленде, люди такие более релакс, такие расслабленные, да, и мало кто идет с такими очень формальными гритингсами. Обычно они приходят откуда-то из стран Азии, например, да, потому что даже американцы, я, давно уже не видел такого, что они присылают там «Dear Sir, Madam» или там «Sir», там Дмитренко, например, мне, да, или что-то такое, или «Мистер Дмитренко». В основном это там «Hi, Денис» и погнали. Вот, но это очень, как бы, Бими объяснил, очень имеет большой смысл, потому что, когда действительно, наверное, я подаюсь на какие-то работы в government, в большие организации, и когда я им пишу там «Привет, Мелоди», например, да, наверное, они, как бы, ставят меня в игнор, возможно. Надо попробовать, я вам потом расскажу. Thank you very much, Bimi. You got something else?
No, I just want to say, I just thought of something.
Let me grab it in the other hand because, I got this.
That's okay.
My God.
No. So that was a very important thing. Is definitely in Australia, you have in Russian. I don't know if it's a saying. My father told me this. He says that in Russia you have a saying. They say you never trust somebody who smiles too much. They're either simple or they want something for you. And this exists also in English when we say if you don't know somebody very well and you're too formal with them, or you act too formal, they usually think that you want something from them. It's like you have a salesman who's trying to sell you something, but you don't want to buy it. This is a very common thing in Australia. So that's why context is important. If you're dealing with a company on email...
Sorry, it's sound from there.
Yeah, that's okay. So if you're dealing with a company on an email... the context is the context is important because you're dealing with the company. But if you take that level of formality and say, "Dear Sir" and "Madam," and you go out into the normal world where you're speaking to people, it is not really used. All right. Only in some settings is it used. But at the same time, just like in any language, it's a very important to be polite. Use polite language. Be friendly. You know. But also, you can't be too polite in English. It's a strange thing. It's true.
Yes, it is true. It is true. Окей, Бими, спасибо тебе большое. Ребят, before we go, ты говорил про австралийский акцент и быстрый разговор. Можешь нам показать?
Can I speak in a really fast Australian accent? Hey, going, my name's Bimala. What are you doing today? Oh, I was sitting at the park, just shooting the shit, just sitting down here with the boys running around, What do you think about that? Oh, get that up here, mate.
Это вот примерно оно так и есть. Вот представляете, вы звоните куда-то, и с тобой такой разговаривает. И ты пытаешься понять, что он сказал, а он пытается понять тебя, что ты ему говоришь.
And when you listen to me speak clearly like this is unusual in Australia. Even the most well-educated person in Australia quite often will speak with we say in Australia, we call it an ochre accent. How you going? What's your name? Oh, my name's Bimala. How you going? What you up to today, man? Oh, Dennis, nice to meet you, Blake. Hey? Yeah. This is and people will hear this. Like my father, he first came to Australia with my mother, and my mother said to him, she said to my father, look, they speak English in Australia, but just not the way that you're used to. Mm-hmm. And when he first came here, he met my grandfather, and my father said, Harvey, how you going?
Да, так и есть. Окей, Бими, спасибо тебе огромное, дружище. Спасибо тебе, что пришел.
Спасибо.
Очень благодарю. Кстати, друзья, я вам так скажу. У Бими вчера был день рождения, поэтому давайте все ему споем Happy Birthday to you. Давай, Бими. Кстати, вот Бими. Тортик. Давайте Бими споем. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Hey, kids, where are you?
Happy birthday, dear Bimmy.
Bimali?
Dear Bimmy.
Happy birthday to you. Hip, hip, hooray! Спасибо большое.
Да, what do you say? Рада день рождения.
С днем рождения.
С днем рождения.
С днем рождения. Ребят, если у вас есть вопросы к Биме, давайте мы сделаем еще одно интервью обязательно, потому что, здесь было очень много технических проблем. Мы первый раз сделали спонтанно, попробовали сделать что-то спонтанное, да, получилось, как получилось. Вот, было много технических проблем с телефоном, с палкой-держалкой, с детьми, бегающими вокруг. Мы не нашли подходящего места, где снимать. Вот снимаем прямо посреди парка. Тем не менее, если у вас есть какие-то particular вопросы, да, какие-то конкретные вопросы к Биме, пожалуйста, пишите их в комментариях. Я адресую их все Биме, и мы ответим в следующий раз, как бы сделаем более такое качественное, постараемся сделать, не обещаю, но постараемся сделать более качественное интервью в более качественных условиях, да, с меньшим шумом, с меньшим ветром, с меньшим солнцем, с нормальной паркой-держалкой и так далее. Вот, поэтому задавайте ваши вопросы, я их обязательно адресую Биме, и мы создадим еще одно, сделаем видео, где ответим на эти вопросы конкретные. И помните, да, Биме обещал научить за 3 месяца. Бесплатно? Is that free? For free? 3 months writing.
3 months writing,
Смотри,
free.
special deal, guys, special deal. Do you have YouTube channel or something, Биме?
No, not yet, but we're going to set one up.
So, пока Биме не это самое, может быть, я его подпишу, и он войдет в наш путь технаря и будет нам помогать с английским языком. В общем, всем спасибо большое, спасибо, что посмотрели, ставим лайк, подписываемся. Желаю вам успеха в обучении английскому языку. Биме, you wanna say something?
Нет, пока.
See you guys. Пока.